Now we come to page 63 of the big book. And again we come to that uh, famous word next. So it says, whoops, I lost you guys for a second. I'm just trying to adjust this. Just bear with me. Remember, I was born in BC before computers, so I struggled a little bit. So where are my glasses? Here we go. I'm referring to a big book. I don't know everything by heart, but I've marked a whole lot of stuff. And I got to tell you, if you keep doing this stuff over and over again, eventually some of it sticks. My mom gets really bugged, when she hears me talking about AA and I quote page numbers. She's saying, why the hell couldn't you do this when you were in school and college? You'd have been a dentist like now. Mom, I don't want to spend my life looking into people's mouths. I'm much happier looking into their souls. So with that, we come to the bottom of page 63, and according to the big book authors, it said, this was only a beginning. Okay? Making the decision to turn our will in our lives, meeting God and saying the prayer, that's only a beginning. Although, if honestly and humbly made an effect, sometimes a very great one was felt at once. For me, I felt like I was walking on air for 2 or 3 days after, I was like really annoying because anything happened, no problem. God has got it. No problem. It's all God's will. I really annoyed a whole lot of people. But look what the big book says at the bottom of page 63. How long do I now have to wait before I begin step 4? Now here you will hear a whole lot of different experiences. Some people will say, well, now you practice step 3 for a while. I was told this by various people. Some people said, no, you got to wait for at least 3 years before you do your third step. Then there was one group of people who said, you don't need to do if you've done step 1, 2, and 3, that's it. You've given your life to God. You don't need to do anything else. Now just come for meetings and you'll be fine. What the big book says is, next we launched on a course of vigorous action, the first step of which is a personal house cleaning, which many of us had never attempted. That's what the big book says. Now, again, when we were doing step 3 yesterday, we defined what next means in the context of AA. And in the context of AA, next means immediately, right now. And I'll give that example again. If tomorrow's headlines say, cure discovered for coronavirus, go to the nearest pharmacy and pick up the 12 tablets you need for the cure. And if Jack and I are there in line at the pharmacy in Baltimore, and the guy gives Jack the pills, and then he says, next, I'm not going to say, no, you know what, I think I'll hang out for a while. I'll say immediately I'll be fighting to get those pills. When the big book says next, they mean right now. And just in case I did not understand what next meant, okay, why can't I just relax with step 3? Come on, I've given my will and life to God. You guys are trying to make me a saint. Look what it says on page 64, okay? Though our decision was a vital and crucial step, it could have little permanent effect unless at once followed by an effort to face and to be rid of the things in ourselves which had been blocking us. Holy cow. So that should settle for everybody who's plugged into this meeting. Or at least it settled for me when I needed to do the 4th step. It said next, it said at once, and then it told me why. It said, it is though my decision to give my will and life over to God was vital and crucial. Vital is from the Latin vita, life-giving. When I go to the doctor, they take my vital statistics. What's my blood pressure, what's my temperature, my pulse rate and stuff like that. Those are my vitals. They keep me alive. What is crucial? Crucial is something that you cannot do without. If you have a car and you don't have a steering wheel, you're not going to be going very far. So what they're saying is, though step 3 is vital and crucial, okay, it can have little permanent effect unless it once followed. And I can't tell you, in the last 30 years, the number of people I have met, and it really hurts me, it saddens me, and I feel really bad. The number of people I've met who've come into AA, they all charged up, I've done step 1, 2, and 3. I said, chalo, start your 4th step. No, my sponsor told me to wait for a while. No, I'm going to practice the third step for a while. I'm going to develop a relationship with God. Dude, we're not talking anything about developing relationships over here. All we are talking about is staying alive, with apologies to John Travolta and the Bee Gees. And that is, I need to do this immediately. Okay? And why do I need to do that? Because my liquor is only a symptom. I need to get down to causes and conditions. It just so happens that when I got restless, irritable, and discontented, I picked up liquor. I also picked up some other drugs. People pick up other stuff. People pick up shopping, they pick up shoplifting, they pick up car lifting, they pick up gambling, they pick up sexting, they pick up sex, they pick up uh, there's a whole bunch, I don't know. Someone told me there's 200 different kinds of 12-step fellowships. I don't know the exact number. I'm not an expert. I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm a member of Al-Anon. I'm also a member of Cocaine Anonymous, but that's in New York. So now we know why we can't relax with step 3. So now that I know I have to do this step 3 immediately, remember this is a textbook. So the next question that comes to mind is, okay, dudes, do you guys have an example that you can show me? And the very next paragraph, they gave us an example. Therefore, we started upon a personal decision. Okay? This was a personal inventory. This was step 4. A business which takes no regular inventory usually goes broke. Taking a commercial inventory is a fact-finding and fact-facing process. It is an effort to discover the truth about the stock in trade. One object is disclose damaged and unsaleable goods to get rid of them promptly and without regret. If the owner of the business to be successful, he cannot fool himself about values. So I run a small little recovery center in India. You know, we do a 21-day program and then I'm off on vacation for 7 days. And whenever I come back to work, I come a day early and I meet with the housekeeper and the staff and we come a day early and then we take stock. It's a business. We go into the kitchen, we see what we have, what we don't have. Do we have enough supplies? Do we have markers? Do we have notebooks? Do we have big books? Do we have 12s and 12s? What is the plural of 12 and 12? I wonder. Anyway, sorry to digress. And so business which takes no regular inventory will usually go broke. And I have to get rid of disclosed and unsaleable goods promptly and without regret. One of the greatest examples I got was about 30 years ago. There was a mango seller in Bombay. And the guy couldn't speak English or anything. And we were at some meeting where step 4 was being discussed. And this guy, he explained it to me so beautifully. He said, every morning I go to the wholesale market with my basket. And the wholesaler just throws a whole lot of mangoes into my basket. I can't sit and argue and pick and choose over there. But when I come out of the wholesale market, I sit on the pavement, I sit on the sidewalk, and I go through my basket. Okay? I'm discovering the truth about the stock and trade. And he says, oh, there are some damaged mangoes. I can't use that. Oh, there are a couple of mangoes with worms in those. I can't use that. Why can't I use that? Because if I try to give those away to my loyal customers, I'm going to be, cutting my own neck. I'm going to lose business and they're going to tell people not to come back to me again. So I said, that's good. So what has that example got to do with me? Businesses and mangoes and all this kind of stuff. The very next paragraph said, we did exactly the same thing with our lives. We took stock honestly. First, we searched out the flaws in our makeup which caused our failure. Damn, I thought it was all that rotten booze I was drinking that caused my failure. Being convinced that being convinced that self manifested in various ways was what had defeated us. We considered its common manifestations. So what I'm going to be asked to do in the fourth step is to take that business inventory, fact-finding, fact-facing. What is my stock in trade? We've been talking about this since Monday. My stock in trade is my thinking. Because on Monday we talked about powerlessness and insanity. My thinking says, go have a drink, you'll be okay. You will beat the game. You'll drink like other people. You'll control and enjoy. On Tuesday we talked about a power that will restore me to sanity. What is my sanity? You'll beat the game. You'll drink like other people. You'll control and enjoy. On Wednesday, we talked about turning our will and our lives over. What is my will, my thinking? Where does it come from? My decision-making process. What is dictating to my decision-making process? My mind, my thinking. That's where the real problem lies. And once again they say, so what is the truth about the stock and trade? The truth about my stock and trade is my thinking. My thinking is screwed up. It's warped. It does not appear to be able to function appropriately. So they're going to tell us that the first thing that we're going to do is discover its common manifestations. So what is the first manifestation? And the big book says, resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From resentment, stems all forms of spiritual disease, for we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. And for the first time in the book, on page 64, for the first time they are mentioning that it's a spiritual illness. You know, all along they've talked about it being a mental illness and a physical illness. Dr. Silkworth has said you need a spiritual solution. Dr. Carl Jung has said you need a spiritual solution. AA has said on page 24, once we've had deep and effective spiritual experiences, our problem was solved. But for the first time, they're actually putting in writing that it is a spiritual illness. So I didn't know what a resentment was. I thought I knew everything, and I thought that resentment just meant to be angry. It's not. So the resentment actually the origins that I've been able to trace, and I'm sure the scholars in this group will be quick to correct me after the meeting, and I hope they do so that we can disseminate accurate information. They said the word resentment, it originates from a French word called ressentir. Ressentir, and Satish, if you're listening from Mauritius, I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciation of this French word. Please forgive me. At some other time you can pronounce it. Probably say ressentir or something like that. You French are so fancy. And from the Latin word sentire. And if my, oh my God, and if there's any Italians here listening in from Goa, Adriano, I hope I've pronounced that. I speak neither French nor Latin, but it comes from resentir and sentire. Now, re in the English language is an intensive prefix. It's intensive. And sentir, either in French or in Latin, it means to feel. So what this word resentment means, to feel, re-feel, to feel again. So let me give you an example, and one of the best examples is, a lot of us over here watch TV, and some of us on this watch sports, some of us watch some other things which we like. And very often somebody that we like, a sports star or a film star or somebody that we really admire and we are rooting for, they get hit by a ball, they get hit by a bat, they get hit by a hockey puck, P-U-C-K, puck. And then they show it again in slow motion. And when I'm watching that scene again in slow motion and I see the ball coming and hitting, ow! I feel the pain again. I'm not even hit. The other guy's been hit. But just seeing it again, it causes me to feel that pain again. Okay? And in the English language, this word has become synonymous with anger, with spite, and with holding a grudge. So, for some reason, it seems like an alcoholic like me has been blessed with what I call a negative video recorder inside my head. I got this little video recorder inside my head. And the moment my eyes open up, I don't know about you guys, but the moment my eyes go, it's like, it's motion sensor. Like you have motion sensor, mine is negative sensor. The moment something negative happens, click, it goes on and it records it for further use. So back in the day when I was drinking, and sometimes today as well, like this morning, my alarm went off at 6:30 so I could go out for my 5-mile exercise, and I put it off. And then, of course, I have it on snooze, and it went off 3 or 4 times, and finally I threw it across the room. And then at 8:30, my friend said, "Where the heck are you?" I said, "No, I'm being lazy." And she said, "No, you got to go." So I went. Now, because I overslept 2 hours and I went in late, I now had to walk in the heat of the day for my for my walk. And so instead of having beautiful climate early in the morning, 6:30, it was hot, it was muggy, there were all people coming across my path on bicycles and bullock carts and all kinds of things. 80% of them were not even wearing their face masks. That's the difference. I'm recording all this stuff. Finally, the road ended, so I had to cut across farm track. I was looking at a buffalo and a couple of egrets wallowing in a piece of marsh, and I was so busy looking at them that I actually stepped into a little bit of slush. So now my sock got wet, and finally I reached the road, and then I made it back home. And then because I'd made it back home, I was late to work. I should have started work at 10. I didn't get back till about, and then by the time I showered, and then the housekeeper was yelling at me because I was late for breakfast. In the meanwhile, we had a power outage, so the two guys who had come in to work with me were giving me filthy looks because they were all ready to start the translation and I was absent. And so you get the picture. Now, back in the day, I would have gone home in the evening and poured myself my first drink, or gone to the bar and poured myself a first drink. And for some reason, the act of pouring that drink into the glass activates my replay button, you know. And I'm sitting there and I'm having a drink, damn alarm clock, why did it go off at 6:30? Stupid hand, why did it throw that alarm clock? Those stupid traffic on the street, that stupid buffalo that distracted me, my sock that got wet, the housekeeper that yelled at me, the electric company. I go on and on and on, trying to, what's happening is I'm reliving all those negative incidents that have happened during the day. And as I'm reliving those negative incidents, I'm again re-feeling the anger. Back in the day, when I felt that anger, it made me restless, irritable, and discontent. And my mind said only one thing. It said only one thing. Go have a drink and you will feel better. And once I had that first drink, then I would be plotting revenge. Okay, tomorrow I'll do this, I'll say that, I'll show the fellow this. Nothing happened because the more I drank, the more I resented, the drunker I got, I passed out, and next day the whole thing happened all over again. Usually it would be waking up late, missing the train to work, getting to work late, clocking in late, having to have words with my supervisor, and this went on over and over again. And it was not until I had an entire psychic change that I was able to deal with negative intention and events. But before I did that, I need to find out what needed to be done. So now we came to the famous, how does one do a fourth step? And I'll quickly digress. So here were some of the methods my first sponsor told me, write the story of your life. He said, what's the first thing you remember? So I remembered something from first grade. So he said, write it out. I said, and then you write everything you remember up to the current age. I thought it was a new Hemingway coming along. I wrote 147 pages. I did rewrites, appropriate punctuation. I was afraid my high school English teacher might get hold of it. I went back, I ripped out pages. I mean, it was crazy. That was one method. Somebody else told me, no. You don't have to do that. What you have to take is a big paper, draw a line down the center, and you do a balance sheet. On one side, you put all the negative stuff, and on the other side, you put all the positive stuff. I believe that particular method is described in another AA book about 12 or 13 years after the big book. Then another person said to me, no, forget all this AA nonsense, man. This is written by amateurs. They don't know their backside from their elbows. So what I'm going to give you is my workbook. I went to one of the best rehabs in the world in Minnesota. It was started by the wife of a former president of the United States. We're not endorsing nor are we opposing anybody. And they have this booklet to do your fourth step. There are 160 questions. I got a little psycho answering some of those questions. They wanted to know about my sex life, my dysfunctional sex life, my family upbringing, what order I was in the... Okay. Then another person said to me, no, you do not have to write anything. Are you crazy? Somebody might find it, they might blackmail you, they might hold it against you. What you need to do is go and find a Catholic priest somewhere and just go and tell him your whole story. Number one, the poor fellow can't say no. If you go and ask him for help, it doesn't matter what religion you are, whether you're atheist, whether you're agnostic. If you go and say, oh, Father, I want to talk to you, the poor fellow has to say yes. So he's a captive audience, he's hostage. And number two, because of the vows he takes from his religion, he's not allowed to tell anybody. So these were just some of the methods that I was given to do my fourth step, and I actually did that story method the first time. 1 year later, this book came into my hand by the grace of God, and I came to this page. And this is what I found the authors of the big book. The we. Who is the we? The we, the 100 who recover. Here's what they say, page 64, last paragraph, line number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Instructions for dealing with resentment. It said, in dealing with resentments, we set them on paper. So, I have a paper over here, and I hope everybody has papers. I'll just come to that in a moment. Instruction number 2. We listed people, institutions, or principles with whom we were angry. Sounds really nice when I'm 30 years sober. You know, when I was 1 day sober, if somebody asked me, whom are you pissed off at? I would have a list of about 30 people at least. Instruction number 3. We asked ourselves why we were angry. This is bloody ice cream, man. If I'm a newcomer, I know bloody well what I'm pissed off about, whom I'm pissed off about, and why I'm pissed off at these people. Instruction number 4. In most cases, we found it was my self-esteem. I feel like a piece of crap. My pocketbooks, which means money. Money only. Only money. We are not talking about emotional security. Don't get confused by anybody else. Our ambitions, our personal relations, including sex, which were hurt or threatened. So we were sore, we were hurt, we were burned up. And just in case we didn't get it, they say it again. You know, alcoholics, I got to be taught. They just told me what to do, and now they say it again. On our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations, which had been interfered with? We were usually as definite as this example. So now they've told me how to deal with the resentments. So on page 65 of the big book, there's a 3-column inventory. Now, I just want to digress for a moment because when I first read this book, they kept talking about a 3-column inventory. And then the 2 fellows who were talking on the book, they kept referring to some mysterious 4th column. I gotta tell you folks, I have been reading this bloody book for 29 of the 30 years of my sobriety. I have yet to find a goddamn 4th column. If anybody can show me a 4th column in the first 4 editions of the big book, I will eat that book publicly. Anywhere. You name the place, I'll show up and I'll eat the damn book. There is no 4th column, there's 3 columns. Whom am I pissed off at? What am I angry at? And why am I angry? Now, we did send out some PDFs, okay? Now again, we just want to put a disclaimer over here. This is my personal experience. If you have a big book, the forward to the 3rd edition, the last 2 lines of the forward says, each day somewhere in the world, recovery begins when one alcoholic talks with another, sharing experience, strength and hope. So I am sharing my experience, strength and hope. So if you have a piece of paper, you can make 3 columns on the paper. Okay? In column number 1, you make a list. Whom are you pissed off at? Okay, where do you live? I live at home. So, is there anyone in your family that you're pissed off at? Your dad, your mom, your brothers, your sisters, your uncles, your aunts, your God knows who? Just make a list. That's all they're asking you to do is make a list. Okay? And column number 1 is just make a list of names. My mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, my Uncle Jack, whatever it is. Column number 2, what am I pissed off about? If you do have the PDF with you and you do have it open, you will see that we put the example of Mr. Brown, okay? And it says, I'm pissed off with Mr. Brown. Why? His attention to my wife, told my wife about my mistress, may get my job at the office. So here's Mr. Brown. And Bill is angry at his attention to my wife. Told my wife about my mistress, I would be pissed too. And may I get my job at the office. And then the big book asks us some simple questions. When this thing happened, did your self-esteem get affected? Did you feel like a piece of crap? Was your money affected? Was your ambitions affected? Was your personal relations affected? And was your sex relations affected? And then Bill W., who put this example into the big book, he gave us some more examples of Mr. Jones, Mrs. Jones, my employer, and my wife. And after giving us 5 areas of concern, self-esteem, money, ambitions, personal relations, sex relations, he went and he added pride and fear in the last column. He added pride and he added fear. So when I am doing an inventory, I look at these 7 areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a real life example. I'm going to give you 2 real life examples from my own inventory, and one of them is straightforward. So my first resentment is I'm resentful at my dad. Okay? So in the second column, I wrote all the reasons. Why am I angry with my dad? Well, he died when I was 16. So he abandoned me. He wasn't there to give me direction through my formative teenage years and through my 20s the time when I was getting all into trouble, my dad wasn't around. So I'm angry at my dad. He was a real poor money manager. He left us a dental clinic, but didn't really leave me any money. Actually, I found out later my mom had everything under control. But that was my resentment. He abandoned me. He wasn't around. He didn't give me direction. So I wrote down the reasons why. He forced me to go to church while I was a kid. I put on. Now my dad did a lot of great stuff. I loved him. I mean, if I'm half the man I am today is because of the lessons I've learned from his life. But the big book is asking me to write down whom am I pissed off at and why am I pissed off. And I did that. And then we had to ask these simple questions. Because my dad died at this age and abandoned me, was my self-esteem affected? It certainly was, man. I would be going to school functions, and all the other kids would be there with 2 parents, and I'd show up with 1 parent. I'd be hanging out with my friends, and my friends would be saying, oh, you know what, my dad did this, my dad did that, my dad is so-and-so, my dad. What about you, Red? My dad is dead. So my self-esteem, I felt like a piece of crap. Did it cost me money? Yeah, it cost me money because when I was 16 and I finished high school, most of the other kids that I went to a school where the school term ended in December and colleges didn't open till September. So I had 6 or 7 months of free time, and most of the other kids I went to school with, their parents paid for them to go on round the world trips, to go and see the world, to sow their wild oats, to take summer courses, prep courses, all kinds of stuff. My dad was dead. So I started working right away. And all the other kids who had money, who earned money, they were able to save this money for a rainy day. Whatever money I earned, I had to spend. If I went for a movie, I had to spend the money. I wasn't taking, like my other friend. So I resented him. His dying cost me money. If he was alive, I could have said, hey, Dad, can I have $20? I'm going for a movie with the boys. So my self-esteem was affected. My money was affected. Number 3, were my ambitions affected? Ambition is not necessarily that I want to be the president or the prime minister. My ambition was to have a complete family unit. I wanted to be able to show up at social functions with my dad and my mom. That was my ambition. My ambition was to be able to talk to my dad and ask him for some advice, for some counsel, occasionally some money. Ambitions were hurt, they were threatened. Were my personal relations affected? Yeah, my personal relations with other members in the family were affected because I would be talking rudely and back answering my grandmother or my mom. I would not be talking to them with respect. And if my dad was around, there's absolutely no way I would get away with that kind of crap. I would just get one whack on the back of my head. There was no such thing as child abuse when I was growing up. There was no such thing as called CPS and stuff like that. If you acted out, you got two whacks and you learn to straighten out your act right away. And so my personal relationships with other people were affected because the statement I heard most often was this: if your dad was around, you would not dare to say what you just did. If your dad was around, you would not dare to do what you just did. So my personal relations with the person saying this to me were affected, and again, more resentment against my dad. Were my sex relations affected? I'm telling you. In 1978, when my dad died, first of all, we did not have sex education in India. And I went to a progressive school. I went to one of the best schools in India. We didn't have sex education. When we came to the chapter in the biology book on sex education, the teachers just skipped that chapter and we went to the next chapter, the family afterwards. So miraculously, people just had children. I would have loved to have had some direction from my dad about how to treat a lady and, what are the right things to do at the right time. And I had to find out by trial and error. But as we discussed yesterday in step 3, it's an instinct. When the time came, I didn't need to look in books or ask anyone. It's an instinct. I just knew what to do. But I would definitely have benefited from his advice and wise counsel. And so my sex relations were affected. Was my pride affected? Yes, my pride was affected because, I'm sitting back now, I'm 58 years old, and, I see how my son talks about me. Sometimes I overhear him talking, oh, you know what, my dad is doing this, my dad is doing that. And there's so much pride in what he says. He has so much pride in what he says about me. And I have a lot of pride in what my dad had done before he died. And after that, it's just a blank slate till I got sober for 12 years. My dad, son of a gun, he was a social drinker. He smoked too much. He was a dentist. He was a firefighter. He was a social worker. He helped a lot of people. Didn't take care of himself. My pride was affected. Was there fear? Yeah, there was fear because if I don't do something about this, the same thing's going to be happening to me. Jackpot. All across the page. Every single area was affected. I'm going to give you another example. This is the first time I'm sharing this in such a large group. I have shared this in smaller groups, but it is important for me to share this because later on it's going to help us in our sex inventory. So the night we buried my father, he died, we went to the cemetery, buried him, and the priest who did all the religious ceremonies, when we went to drop the guy back at the church, the guy sexually assaulted me that night. Okay? And I was shocked, I was hurt, I was devastated. It was 1978. Nobody said anything about sexual abuse or molestation or anything of a minor. I carried all that shame and guilt and fear and remorse for years. The abuse went on for a couple of years because the guy got transferred to the same college that I enrolled in. So in column number 1, whom am I angry at? I'm angry at the Reverend so-and-so. Why am I angry? Because he molested me. He took advantage of me. What was affected? My self-esteem. I felt like a piece of crap. My money. I had to spend a heck of a lot of money in therapy just to get my head straightened out. My ambitions. My ambition is to feel safe and secure with a man of God that my family trusts. My personal relationships with my family was affected because people in my family did not know why I had such a negative attitude towards this guy. So what is wrong with you? And I could not tell them there was absolutely no way in 1978 that you could tell your mom or your grandmother or anybody, hey, by the way, I was abused by absolutely no way. Out of the question. Today is a whole different ballgame. Was my sex relations affected? Yeah, my sex relations were affected because the question in my mind was, why did he hit on me? Was I giving out gay signals? Am I gay? I'm not sure. And as a result of that, I became very very promiscuous over the next few years. And unfortunately, I had a lot of sex with a lot of people, without really it being emotional or meaningful. And unfortunately, a lot of people got hurt in the process of me just acting out sexually. So yeah, my sex relations were affected. Was my pride affected? Yeah. Oh my God, he did this to me. Me, Roy T, the great Roy T, and this guy abused me. Doesn't he know who I am? Fear. Oh my God, somebody else might do this again. All the way across the page. So when it came to the sex inventory, what we are asked to do is just three things. Number one, make a list of the people that you're angry at. Number two, and my suggestion, I can't tell you what to do, I can only share what I did. So the first time, like I said, I did this bloody life story, fourth step of 147 pages. It was nice. It was well written, I believe. I wish I had kept a copy. Maybe I could have published it in these coronavirus times and made a couple of bucks. But when I was 1 year sober and I got this book and I did this book the way the big book describes, I was liberated. Now, the PDFs that we sent out, I put a helpful list of people, and you can look at them and people you're pissed off at today. Immediate family, extended family, friends and acquaintances, lovers, clergy, police, bosses, employers, sponsors, sponsees, AA members, AA groups, any A groups, wives, children, anyone can increase the list. So I'm almost done with the fourth step, resentment inventory. Three things we have to do. Whom are we angry at? Why are we angry? What got affected? 7 areas. Self-esteem, felt like a piece of crap. Pocketbook, that's money. Ambitions. My ambition can be in the areas of money. My ambition can be social ambitions. My ambitions can be sexual ambitions, and they are hurt or threatened. My personal relations with people, my sexual relations with people, my pride and my fear. These are the 7 areas. So when I first got hold of the big book, as I've shared before, that these two men were sharing their experience on the big book, and I love these guys. They changed my life. I actually had the opportunity to meet them in '96, and at that time I only got these tapes. I didn't get any worksheets or anything. So here's the crazy part. When I'm listening to the tapes and they're talking about a fourth column, and I'm not finding any fourth column in the book. And I used all kinds of manipulation, and I got somebody to send me some worksheets from the US. And when I came to this fourth step, it was like totally crazy. There were like 15 or 16 columns. There was like self-esteem, and there was emotional security, financial security, social ambition, material, this, that, the other. There were so many columns. And then there was this famous fourth column. Where was I at fault? Now, when I tried to work that across the page, this drove me crazy, especially with this priest, because I said, I'm pissed at this guy. Why? Because he abused me and everything got affected. And then we came to column 4. Where was I? I was not at fault. I was a victim in this case. What do you mean I'm at fault? And you know what? And I would use, now I was basically these two guys on tape trying to sponsor me, and I'm trying to figure this out. At that time, there was only 3 or 4 other people in India that were using this method that I'm aware of in 1991. And I would convince myself that I was at fault for putting myself in the position. How ridiculous. How ridiculous that is. Later on, when we come to the second part of the resentments, I'll come back to this example. Now, I have an amend to make because I started using these worksheets, and there are 2 or 3 people on this meeting when they were doing their fourth step, and I said, okay, here's whom you resent, here's what they did to you, and here's what how you were affected. Now, where are you at fault? And we would have these knockdown arguments. What do you mean? Where am I at fault? I'm not at fault. Can't you see? What are you, Roy? Are you effing blind? Can't you see that I didn't do anything? No, you must be at fault. And we would spend hours trying to make up crap to find a fault in this guy. You know, I went to the US, and then I think in 1998 I was sponsoring a young guy who was about 16 years old. And we came to this, and he said, what are you talking about, man? There's no fourth column. And how am I at fault? He had some sexual stuff as well. And I prayed that night. And I prayed that night and went back to the big book and I said, you know what? If there are 3 columns, there are 3 columns. Now I'm a lazy son of a gun. So I don't like to keep rewriting self-esteem, self-esteem, self-esteem 500 times in the 3rd column. So I just put together a small worksheet. Column 1, the names. Column 2, what did they do to me? And column 3, I took those 7 areas and I just dropped 7 columns. I don't care if you use it, don't use it, burn it, makes no difference to me. I'm sharing my experience, strength and hope and it's helped me stay sober. So I really want to thank Girish, Anish, all the other co-hosts for giving me this opportunity to share tonight. And as there are practice, we'd like to end today. We have what's called the set-aside prayer. I belong to a group in the US, which is a kind of subgroup in AA. It's called a back to basics kind of group. There's a whole number of us that have got back into the big book. We have meetings, we study the book, we sponsor people right from the day. And there's a prayer that many of the groups use that I'd like to use. It's called the set aside prayer. In chapter 4, we agnostics, the word prejudice is used 7 times. And we are asked to lay aside our prejudice. So the prayer goes something like this: God, please set aside everything I think I know about the big book, about alcoholism, about recovery, about the steps, about meetings, about my sponsor, about my own bloody smartness. Please let me set that all aside. Let me approach this meeting and these worksheets and this step with an open mind so I can have a new experience today. So I want to thank everyone for joining me in this meeting, and God willing, we'll see you all tomorrow. I hope all of you will sit up all night and do your 4th step. Thanks, Girish. Thanks, Anish. Done. My self-esteem gets affected. Can you hold on just a second? Someone has asked me this and I actually wrote it down. Just give me a minute. How I feel about myself is my self-esteem. And when it happens to me, that makes me feel bad and makes me feel really rotten about myself, that's my self-esteem. Pride is how I like to project myself to others. I am this, I am that, I am the almighty, I am the whatever. And that's my grandiosity, my ego, my showing off, my big shotism. That's, if I will do the research. I did write these 2 things down. I will have it ready after the meeting so you can send it out in the PDF. Sorry I can't be more clear.
Sure, not a problem. We will be patient and tolerant. Having said that, the next question that has come is, when it comes to ambition, is it purely to do with, isn't that also purely to do with how I'm seen by people?
I think it's an individual thing. For example, my ambitions. My security ambitions are to be able to make enough money to be self-supporting till I'm 62 and I can get my early social security and hopefully be able to live off that. Those are my security ambitions. At one time, my ambitions were to own a house and to own a car and to be the director of top rehabs in the US, and all those things did happen. Those are not my security ambitions anymore. My security ambitions now are just to make enough money to be able to have enough to retire and to provide for my son. So my social ambitions, as I shared yesterday, my social ambitions in the 80s, I wanted to be the youngest CEO of any airline in India. I wanted to be on the cover of Time magazine. Those are my social ambitions. I wanted to only be seen with beautiful women and that kind of nonsense. My social ambitions in the 90s and into the early 20s was I definitely wanted to be known as the director of a successful rehab with a good recovery rate, and people knew that if you went to any of the 3 rehabs I worked at in the US, man, you got a really good chance of recovering. You'll get good treatment over there. Those were my social ambitions. I want people to be referring to me, hey man, go to XYZ rehab because Roy, see, the social ambition. Roy is the director there. He'll make sure that he hooks you up with a good counselor. So those are my social ambitions. And my sexual ambitions used to be to get what I can wherever I could, whenever I could, however I could, and damn the consequences. My sexual ambitions now are, God willing, to find a loving partner with whom I can be unselfish and kind and hopefully compatible. And, if she's younger than me, not push me into the pool when I'm in a wheelchair. That's my ambition.
So, when one says that their personal relationship is affected, it could also be the ambition that they want to have about the kind of personal relationship they want.
I didn't understand that. Say it again slower.
So, when I say that, for example, let's take me. Suppose my personal relationship is affected because of a resentment with, say, some cousin.
Yeah.
Isn't that also the ambition I have for that personal relationship?
Absolutely. It's interchangeable. I mean, they're both related because if you have a cousin and your cousin did something to you, okay? Maybe he made you look like a fool at the wedding where you were drunk and you were acting like an ass. And he told everybody, he videotaped you and sent it on the family chat. Look at Anish being like an ass. So now your self-esteem is affected. Your ambition is affected. This is my bloody cousin. I don't want him to, diss me. Probably cost you money to get that video off the internet. Now your personal relationships with the guy are affected. And you can have multiple things affected in these 7 areas that the big book mentions. Self-esteem, money, ambitions, personal, sex, pride and fear.
I think the question was more about confusion that this particular thing that I don't have the relationship that I wanted to have with my cousin. Is that an ambition or is it a personal relation? Or
What?
If my relationship with my cousin is not the way I wanted it to be, is that a tick against ambition or is that a tick against...
Yes, I'm resentful at my cousin because I don't have the kind of relationship I would like to have with my cousin, column 2. What got affected? My ambition and my relationship. So there are a couple of questions on the chat. Can I answer them?
Yeah, just the last one. I don't understand the question completely, but I will still read it out.
Yeah.
The question is that I have heard people.
Yeah.
Where do I write that?
If you're patient, we will come to the people you hurt on Wednesday or Thursday. There's a column for that.
Okay.
So there are just a couple of things on the chat. I don't know the question. I'm 31 years sober. I've done my 4th step without writing it down, but just talked with my sponsor. That was definitely done by many people in the past. Like I said, I qualified. I was told to write my story. Someone else said do a balance sheet. It's in the 12 and 12. Someone else said use the famous rehabs questionnaire. People have done that. Someone else said just talk to your sponsor. Someone else said talk to a priest. There's a guy in my home group in New York who actually tells his sponsors, I don't want to hear your 5th step. Go and find a person who's hearing impaired and speech impaired, deaf and dumb, we call them in India, and go and tell him your 5th. Look, whatever works, man. If you're still sober and that works for you, God bless you. I'm just sharing with you what I found in the big book and what I used. The second person said, how can someone do their 4th step without writing and just by talking out with the sponsor? Is that possible? Absolutely. So I was about 1 or 2 years sober and was fighting with a guy who was 20 years sober because he had not done the 4th step. And he said to me, I don't know how to read and write. So we sat down and did it orally. I said, okay, whom are you pissed off at? And I sat and I made a list of names and we went through each name. Why are you pissed at him? This. How does it make you feel? That. He talked, I listened. And the third question was Is it okay if we not write the steps and talk it out with our sponsor? I don't know, whatever works for you. I can only share with you what works for me. So again, reminder, forward to the third edition, bottom of the page. Each day recovery begins with one alcoholic shared with another, sharing experience and hope. 90 meetings in 90 days did not work for me because when I got sober, I was working in the film industry. I could not go for meetings 90 days in a row. I have yet to do 90 meetings. I've never done 90 meetings. When I was 2 or 3 years sober, I got a contract from UNICEF to do a project on primary education. We went round India in a bus. 6 months I got to only 2 meetings. There was no internet. There was no bloody WhatsApp. There was no cell phones. I stayed sober. I did what the book asked me to do. So this is my personal experience. Other people may have other experiences. Totally okay then, if it works for you.
Roy, I have some questions.
I have resentments for a person who's not in the world. How to make an amend and an inventory. Yes, I had resentments against dead people. I wrote it out, and when we came to step 9, so if you're still here next week, we'll tell you how to make that amend.
Roy, I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
So the difference between self-seeking and selfish.
Yes, go ahead.
That's the question. What's the difference?
Self-seeking is, Bill W. was an English major in school, in college. And especially when we came to step 6 and 7, where the question he was asked most often in AA was, what's the difference between a defect of character and a shortcoming? And Bill W. always gave the same answer. You can look it up. I don't know where it is. Anupam or Atul will know. And Bill always said the same thing. He said, I was an English major, and I was always taught that if you want to say the same thing in 2 consecutive sentences, change the word. So there's no difference between a shortcoming and a defect of character. I know that's not your question. Please bear with me. My sponsor told me, being a lazy son of a gun is a defect of character. Not doing anything about it is a shortcoming. So for me, being selfish would be if there's only 1 bar of chocolate in the fridge with Nisrin sent in the morning. If there's only 1 bar of chocolate in the fridge and there were 2 AA members here at my place earlier, I went to the kitchen and I quietly ate half that bar of chocolate without sharing it with them. That would be selfish. If I took that bar of chocolate and came out and sat in the living room and ate it without offering them anything and showing them, see, I have Cadbury's fruit and nut, none for you, that would be self-seeking. And again, this is my understanding. I'm not an English major, just an alcoholic trying to stay sober.
Thank you, Roy. The next question. Is it possible that I am aware what wrong happened to me, who had done that wrong, and how it affected me, but I don't hold a grudge or am not angry anymore?
Yeah.
Does the mere memory of that negative experience still be defined as a resentment?
So I would say to that person, if you have taken spiritual treatment for that, okay, it's not a resentment anymore. But if it still pops up occasionally, I don't know. If it bothers you, it could be a very good exercise to just write it out and see how it affected you. Because how it affected you has affected the lives of other people. Like I said, that one person sexually molesting me affected the lives of other people, Other people got hurt. I didn't hold a grudge or anything and I don't hold any grudge now, but it did. There were a couple of people that have asked me questions. You can always WhatsApp me privately. You have my number. Another question, do you write from childhood? If you're still remembering stuff that pissed you off from childhood, and if you've never done this before, please do it. If you've already done a 4th step, don't. I try to do a 4th step at least once a year if I can. I usually get 1 or 2 things. But usually if I'm doing a pretty solid 10th and 11th every day, there's really not much for me to write. Somebody has made a comment. Doesn't the book clearly say written? Yes. when we get to page 75, they'll say written inventory. The truth of the matter is that when the big book was written in 1939, it was the United States, and most of the 100 members, if not all of them, were all educated. They all knew how to read and write, and that's what they did. AA has gone all over the world. There are so many people who cannot read and write, and if they can't and they can't write it today, they can. Okay, here, if you can't write it, here's a solution. When my son was in school, he was having some difficulty with one part of his education. So we got an IEP, and he was told that instead of, he could do the multiple choice question and answers, but when it came to the essays, there was an app called Dragon Dictation. I'm not endorsing it, I'm just sharing my experience. So he could speak, he could read the answer, speak his answer into the app. The app converted it to text and immediately emailed it to his teacher. So maybe you can try that. Speak out your resentment, record it, and WhatsApp it to your sponsor if your sponsor is willing.
Thank you, Roy. I believe Anish has a few more questions.
Yeah.
Roy, one question that has been asked for me to communicate is that this gentleman is trying to recall all his life and whole night has not been able to sleep. So I'm not able to understand if it is the challenge of remembering all his life that's keeping him up, or the memories are keeping him up.
Either way, my resentments kept me up for many years, and I dealt with my resentments by drinking. When I came to AA, I did the writing the story stuff, and my resentments continued to keep me up. Thank God I didn't drink. Eventually, I did the step this way, and then there is treatment for resentments, spiritual treatment. I took the treatment. That's what we are going to do tomorrow. I took the treatment. I sleep like a baby.
The next question is that should the step 4 be done for only active resentments, or even things that I have moved on from, should I write it down?
Pardon?
If I have moved on from certain resentments, should I write them down, or only active resentments?
Look, when I'm doing, I had a huge resentment against my mom. I never spoke to her for 12 years. That got taken care of. I'm not going to keep writing this every year, man. We have a great relationship. If the resentment has been taken care of, I don't know, unless you like writing, and if you choose to keep rewriting the same thing over and over again, I mean, that's your personal choice. But if you have got, God forbid, coronavirus, and you go to the doctor and you take the tablets and you cure of coronavirus, or you've recovered from the coronavirus, are you going to keep doing that over and over again? No, you're done. Chitra. So step 4 is based on resentment only. How to work on pride, fear, personal relationship. No, it is not based on resentment only. Today is only part 1 of step 4. There are 6 parts. There are the other areas. We'll be covering 1 part tomorrow and the rest next week. So Chitra, stay with us, please, and God willing, you'll get your answers. Can't hear you. Your mic is not clear.
Quick follow-up to the previous question. So in case there is something that you remember later, you can always do the same process again, right?
Of course. See, it's like this. When I first started writing the 4th step this way, okay, I made that list, of family members, friends, people in school, people in college, people at work, people in AA, professional people, cops, firefighters, the government, the IRS. I had a whole list of people. And as I started writing one name and one resentment, it would trigger a memory of somebody else. Quickly add them to the list. Something comes up ahead.
Anish, do you have any more?
Is it okay if we not write the 4th step and talk it out with our sponsor? Ask your sponsor if they are okay with it. They might say, go find another sponsor.
Rachna has been waiting for that answer 2-3 times. She's reminded. I think you had answered it already, but
I did answer it earlier, Rachna, but again. Purushottam, is it to be done in one go? My suggestion is, just my suggestion. If everybody here is willing, try and write out 4 or 5 resentments for tomorrow. Okay, if you're willing to do that, try and get one from your family, somebody you're pissed off at. Try and get one from friends, school, college, or your current social circle. Try and get somebody from the workforce if you are in the workforce. Try and get somebody from 12-step recovery. I'm sure you'll have a short list there. Try and find something from the, and it's not just people, it's also principals, principals and institutions. You know, I'm really angry at the government because they said that they are giving hundreds and thousands. My brother called me from the US and said, yo, Roy, listen, you're giving everybody X amount of money for hardship something. I said, I didn't get the memo, man. What nonsense. So, I'm resentful at the Department of Motor Vehicles because if I go to New Jersey, I can just hand in my Indian license and I can get a New Jersey license. But if I go to New York, they make me jump through hoops just to get my bloody license. And of course, I lived in New York, so New Jersey was loath to give me a license. And so I resented them. I think, you know what? I'm not getting into this now. So my suggestion is try and write out one family, one friend, one educational, one work, one recovery, and one principle. Honesty is the principle. I'm angry at the principle of honesty. Why? My parents always taught me, honesty is the best policy. Hard work will be rewarded. You know what? I work like a bloody dog, and all these criminals are driving around in fancy cars, and so I am resentful at the principle of honesty. Why? I'm not getting what I want. What do I want? All 7 areas of it.